And welcome back to my channel. As promised, this is a midweek video and we're going to be discussing the team rankings. Not necessarily team title hopes, but the team ranking discussion. And we have a lot to talk about today. We're going to talk about both men and women's Division 1. And I'm going to discuss just simply the top 10. You will see the top 25 on your screen. It just came out. But today on both sides, we'll talk about the top 10 and what we see here. And let's talk about the men's rankings, and we'll just go ahead and get started right away. And when we look at the men's ranking, we see them as USC, Arkansas, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, North Carolina, Florida, Washington, Oklahoma, Villanova, and Virginia Tech. I don't really have a lot of discrepancies there. There's some areas that I have questions. I'm like, don't know if I agree with that. But I do agree with number one, number two, and number three. Number one is USC, number two is Arkansas, and number three is Texas A&M. I think that is a fair assumption as to where they stand. USC has one of the top sprint squads in the country and probably the deepest we've seen in a long time. They have, to me, the top sprint squad in the 60, 200, and 400. They have the top hurdler in the country, the top long jumper in the country, and they have the ability to score in other events, but that's where they're most potent. And they may qualify 3 to 5 gentlemen in the 60, 3 to 4 in the 200, possibly three in the 400. Well, really three because they have three 45-second runners and they have a great relay. This is a really strong team performing at a very high level in the midst of a coaching change where we saw their top assistant, Joanna Hayes, leave and go to UCLA and take over there at her alma mater. But we can't ignore the great success that is being handled by the current coaching staff under Coach Watts right now. Hats off to them because USC looks really, really strong. Number two, Arkansas. They're the same as always. They can score in pretty much every group. I think their strongest group this year to me is between their hurdlers and their long distance runners. They have one of the best hurdle squads and one of the best 5K squads that we've seen. They're going to score very well in the sprints, going to score very well in the distance, the hurdles, the jumps. The only area that I think that they're kind of missing is the throws. But I think eventually that's going to be, something that they answer. This is a very deep team. And they're number two simply because USC is so overwhelming in their areas. But I wouldn't be shocked if, Arkansas returns to number one. I think this is one of their better teams. I definitely think they're going to win the SEC title. Number three is Texas A&M, very similar to Arkansas. They have a very strong team in the sprints and the hurdles, the jumps. They're now developing really great pole vaulters. The throws are going to come along. Distance runners are finally coming along. They're starting to get to the level that I think will help them score and be an added benefit, not just the 800-meter runners. We're looking at the milers and the longer distance and a potential threat in a DMR to qualify, which is the goal. You want to qualify as many people as you can to get to the national meet because that's how you can even have chances to score. Because anything can happen once you get there. But this Texas A&M squad looks pretty comfortable with their 4x4. They changed the relay order, and that allowed for them to have the number one ranking in the country, surpassing a team that already beat them in Florida. Uh, we'll probably have some questions answered this weekend. There's two very big meets. You have the Tyson Invitational in Arkansas, and then you have the Paul Invitational at Clemson. And so things will be really interesting because when we have a conversation come Sunday or Monday, I'm almost certain that many of our viewpoints will be further solidified whether or not we agree with these rankings, and we'll have a better understanding where some of these teams and some of these athletes look. And then we have the number four ranked team, Texas Tech, and this is where things get a little iffy because I honestly think you can switch 3 and 4, but I have no issue with Texas A&M being there. Texas Tech to me is just a really strong squad in the short sprints and the hurdles. They have great jumpers. They have a great pair of relays. We're still waiting to see the throwers going to match the overall level. We know on the women's side they got Shelby Frank and she's going to help them. But on the men's side, we're still waiting to see more, I think, from their throwers, although they do have a pretty good group. This is going to be a difficult team to defeat. They've already got an indoor title to their credit under Coach Wes Kitley. Just don't know if they have enough to surpass a USC or an Arkansas because they have very similar frameworks. Specifically, if they're going to be relying on their sprints, USC has already proven to be the superior team on their own track. So we'll see. Number five is where I have the big discrepancy, the biggest. Number five is North Carolina. And that is not to knock them. I've been very positive on them all year for obvious reasons. Ethan Strand, Parker Wolf performing at a very high level consistently. I've bragged on how I saw Parker Wolf in person and was just blown away. Consistently ran well in the final couple laps. I believe that was the 5K. I just was like, it's like he's doing repeat 400s at a very high kick, and he's just having any trouble. And then you got Ethan Strand. It's just a really talented group, very deep group. But I think they're heavily reliant on just those two. There are some great supporting, athletes on that team. They're going to have great performances in distance. But I don't know if they have enough as a collective team to being ranked that high, specifically over the team that's number six, and that's Florida. I think Florida should be five here, and I think North Carolina probably should be eight. And I'll explain, more when we get further down the list. But number six is Florida. Great in the sprints, obviously. We're still waiting to see the hurtlers come along. I think Damaris is getting there. Vance Nielsen is improving. We're still waiting to see Joshua Bookman. They got a decent trio right there. If things can kind of come together. Still waiting to see more of the rest of the 400-meter runners. Their team is very young, but Florida has taught us a lot the past few years. This team has broken whatever haze was over them for a while. When they come to a championship meet, they are literally okay with expecting to win because they constantly keep doing it. They're on a record stretch, and that's probably not going to change anytime soon. So, based on what we've seen so far this season, I think the ranking for them to be at five is a fair ranking. We still need to see more of their jumpers because right now it's Malcolm and who else? I know it's a bunch of young guys, but none of them to me have stepped up to that level. We're still waiting to see, what more of the throwers, although their throwers are, coming along. That was a great coaching hire by Coach Holloway because it's very clear that it's working in their favor. And I think we're going to learn a lot about this team this weekend at the Tyson Invitational. Number seven is, another issue because I still think they're also higher than North Carolina, and that's Washington. And they're in the same vein because they're both going to be relying on their distance runners, but I think Washington has a deeper squad, and I think that Washington may be able to qualify athletes in other areas outside of just distance. They are a great distance squad, make no mistake about it, specifically middle distance. They have great 800 runners, great milers, but they are going to score in the 3K, and they are going to score in the 5K, and they're going to have a great DMR. But they have great pole vaulting development, specifically on their women's side. I'm almost positive they're going to have enough, more than enough, than what North Carolina has. So although they're seven, I honestly think Florida should be five, Washington should be six, North Carolina should be seven. That is where I have the big discrepancy. Then you have number eight, and number eight is Oklahoma. And it's been a while, personally, for me to see Oklahoma rank so high. It's very clear that this program, the track and field program, was very ready for the move to the SEC. They already had athletes able to compete. They're really, really, really good in the distance events. They're not as deep as Oklahoma State, but they are good. And they clearly have great jumpers in the triple jump and the long jump and then the high jump because, they've been performing very well over the course of the past few years. Multi-event athletes. I think Oklahoma can score in a lot of different ways. Still wanting to see the sprint squad get back to the way they were in years past because they're not there as of yet, but they are a decent squad. And so I think they'll be able to perform at an admirable level in the SEC and on a national stage. I think their number eight ranking is well earned. Number nine is Villanova. I think they're the distance team on the outside of looking in within the big three, which are Washington, North Carolina, and Arkansas. I think another distance power like that, you can say potentially New Mexico or Oklahoma State, but I think as a collective right now, they're not matching the efforts of a North Carolina, a Washington, and an Arkansas. But Villanova is really solid. I saw them in person, and if you've been to the Penn Relays like I have, they're gamers and they show up regularly against high competition, and they'll probably do that again this year. I think this program is ready for the next level. They are very deep in the 3K. They are the top 3K squad in the country, and that's going to probably bode well for them when it's time to discuss DMRs. And then our number 10 time, or no, excuse me, not 10 time, but number 10 team in the country is Virginia Tech. Nice, consistent development of this program over the years. Hats off to the coaching staff at Virginia Tech. Excellent work. They have developed great sprinters. They've got some pretty good hurdlers. They got some great throwers, some great distance runners, and clearly some great jumpers. The pole vaulting program there, so even though it's more on the women's side, it's still top tier. I think that this team will be is kind of on the on the verge of coming up. I think they're the next sort of big program that's being developed. New coaching that's there. I think they're ready to move the Virginia Tech program further. Try to put a lock on the DMV because that's a heavy area for a lot of teams in the South, like a Florida or Florida State, Georgia. They seem to really do very well recruiting in that area, and Virginia Tech really probably wants to keep that on lock and get to competing at the same level as those schools. And that's our top 10 on the men's side. And on the women's side, which is where I think things get a little interesting. The number one team on the women's side is Texas Tech. Then you have Arkansas, Oregon, Illinois, Stanford, BYU, Texas A&M, Georgia, Florida, and South Carolina. Man, is this a great group of teams. Some of them are so very loaded. I think this is the strongest Texas Tech team I've seen, and they've had some pretty solid women's teams over the years. But this is just a very deep group. They have the number 2 ranked 60 squad, the number 1 ranked 60 hurdle squad. They're decent in the 200, decent in the 400. They're going to have a great relay. They have obviously one of the best high jumpers. They have a really deep high jump group, a really deep triple jump group. Their number 1 ranking to me is so well earned. You would think because of what we've seen from Arkansas over the years that there's no way anyone can dethrone them. But I feel very comfortable with saying that I think Texas Tech may be the team that actually can do it. This is a very deep group, and they're going to be able to score in areas that Arkansas is just not looking to score in. I think the only other area where Arkansas can match them is the 60 hurdles. We don't see them with a great 60-meter sprinter. We know Arkansas is going to be deep in the 400. They're going to probably get deep in the 200. They have a great 800 squad. I don't think they have enough this year to beat Texas Tech. I know that's saying a lot because Arkansas is going to find a way, and we'll know more after this weekend. But I do think Texas Tech is the better squad over number 2 Arkansas. Number 3 is Oregon. Oregon to me is a team that can score in pretty much every area on the track. They've got great sprinters and hurdlers. They've got great jumpers, great distance runners, and of course, great throwers. If there's any team that could sneak up on Arkansas and Texas Tech, it's them. This is a very deep squad, and I don't even think they've shown their full hand yet. And I don't think they will until it's time to get everybody qualified. I think they may be overwhelming when it comes to the Big Ten championships. I think the Pac-12 schools that have moved into the conference will make it very difficult. I think this is going to be an extremely competitive Big Ten championship, or I think Oregon may come out on top. Number 4 is a team that I actually thought would win the Big Ten, and they still might, and that's Illinois. Hats off to Petros. He leaves Georgia, or that situation ended unfortunately, but he's back to coaching and coaching at a high level. He's clearly got the best long jump squad. Number 3 ranked high jump squad is putting together some decent triple jumpers, waiting for their pole vaulters to catch up. They're coached by the great Dennis Mitchell, formerly of Akron. This is a great group, and we're waiting for those sprinters and those distance runners to kind of get back to where they have been, and Illinois is certainly capable of that, and they will get there. And Illinois is also great in the throws too. So this is a really deep squad. They have multi-event athletes. They're going to be able to score. They're going to rely heavily on the field events. We know that's okay. Win where you can, and they're going to win there. And I think the number 4 rank is earned, but we're going to know more soon. I think the Big Ten championship, they're the old Big Ten stalwart trying to move the Oregons out of the way and the USCs. If anyone that from the old era can beat Oregon, it would be Illinois, just simply by their ability to overwhelm in the areas that they are the strongest. Number 5 is Stanford, and hats off to J.J. Clark because I mean, after things ended at Tennessee, people didn't think still could coach at a high level. He goes to UConn and does a remarkable job at UConn, but he comes to Stanford, and Stanford is starting to look like his old Tennessee teams where they were regularly competing for national titles. Stanford, of course, is great in the 800, but they're also the number one 5K squad, the number three 3K squad. They're going to be heavy in the distance. They're going to have a great DMR. They've got some great jumpers. They got some decent sprinters and hurdlers. So we're going to learn more about them, I think, come ACC championship time. Because I think, surprisingly, I think of all the teams that have moved, Stanford and Oregon are the best positioned to, take over their new conferences. And ironically, they were heads up in the Pac-12. So the more things change, the more they stay the same. This is a really good group, led by Juliet Whitaker and Royson Willis. I'm curious to see what what Stanford does come postseason. And I'm even more curious to see what they look like outdoors, because I feel like Stanford, for whatever reason, is kind of holding back. And I'm like, why? You have such great athletes. And, we don't all know what's going on in those programs. They don't want to burn those athletes out. Someone may be injured. But I think there's a lot under there with Stanford that we just don't know about yet. And I think they're ready to just burst their talent and make everybody go, ha, you thought it was Texas Tech. You thought it was Arkansas. You thought it was Oregon. It really is us. Number 6 is BYU. BYU really looks like the new distance power. And I don't even want to say new because that's trash. But they look like the distance power. Granted, you have a Stanford, you have Oregon, and Arkansas not the same way, and they're trying to get back to that. But BYU is really kind of become, a tough squad to handle distance wise. Great 800 runners. They're two ranked as a collective. In the mile, they're number 2 ranked as a collective, and in the 5K, they're number 3 ranked. But of course, they're in amongst the top 10 in the 3K. They're going to have a great DMR. They're going to have a decent 4x4. It's a really solid squad, and I think they are, a little distance heavy, but they can score in other areas. And they've moved to the Big 12, and as of right now, they are the top team in the conference, and they're probably going to run away with it. Number 7 is Texas A&M. This team does not look like the old Pat Henry teams of LSU, or the early teams at Texas A&M, where they were just a superior sprints and hurdles and jumps power. Kind of the way that he won at LSU. This team is more universal. They've got pretty good sprinters. They clearly have great hurdlers. They've got really good jumpers. Developing your throwers to a high level. Getting your distance runners to a high level. This is a pretty complete team. I still think they're still waiting for some of their sprinters to kind of get to a higher level, waiting for the distance runners to get to a higher level, because everywhere else they've shown noticeable improvement. Jaya Covington at one point was the top hurdler in the country, and she may still end up being that because she is a top runner in the SEC. So this is a strong Texas A&M squad. We're still waiting to see what else they can do. I don't think they're at the same level of a Pat Henry team in the past, but they are well deserving of their number 7 rank. The number 8 rank shocks me, and I think it's because we haven't seen them really do anything. So I think of any team that's going to vault soon, it'll probably be this team. That's Georgia. When I saw the rankings, I was like, why are they ranked so low? And then you look at the collective number, you're like, they haven't performed the same way. Where is Kayla Jackson? Where are the rest of those, really young sprinters? What's going on? Why are they hiding? And this may be the weekend where they stop hiding. I believe they're going to be at the Tiger Paw Invitational at Clemson. So I really do think that this Georgia team is going to vault come next week. They have the number 2 ranked 400 squad behind Arkansas. And as we saw in that 4x4 relay, they could hang. Even though Arkansas is without Kaylin Brown, and we don't know how long that's going to be. She did leave as a DNF and looked like a potential injury. So I'm hoping not. Because I have, very high expectations and high hopes for Kaylin Brown. But Georgia has Aaliyah Butler. And Georgia's going to show up in the sprints and in the hurdles and in the jumps and in the throws. It just has not happened yet because I don't think they've really gone into any meets as a full collective. And I think this is the weekend they do that. Number 9 is Florida. Florida is really jumps heavy. They have a great core of long jumpers. And triple jumpers are getting there. They don't have, a Giannis David yet, but they have a couple of young triple jumpers that are, I think, going to perform well later in their career. And Thea Charlton may be our 23-foot jumper indoors. Can't believe I'm saying that. They don't have the hurdler of a great start to balance out the sprint squad. I think they should be. They may even actually be more 10 because they're going to be relying on their distance runners. Hilda Olamomoy. I'm waiting to see who else can get to that scoring level, and it will show this weekend. This is still a good squad. It's a young squad, but this good young squad is performing at a very high level, and I gotta say, watch out for this team if everything comes together the way they want it to. We still haven't seen Miss Penn run the 400. Layla Owens, she ran the 600 early in the season. We haven't seen her. We haven't seen them put together a 4x4 in a while. And so this may be the weekend we see that. So things will get interesting come next week. I definitely do expect a bevy of new number one performances when we have our review show. Number 10 is South Carolina, and I feel the same way. This is watch, rinse, and repeat for Georgia, Florida, and South Carolina. None of them have shown their full hand. Specifically, South Carolina, it seems that they're moving along a little bit slower than they did last indoor season when they came out like gangbusters. Specifically, Jamija Ford. I think she's kind of really been lax, not performing at the same level, and that's probably because the coaching is moving her at a different pace. I think last year she was looking to possibly make Team USA for the Olympics team, and I do think she's a future star, clearly. She is a defending indoor champion in the 200. And you've got another freshman this year who's taking over. That's India Mayberry for TCU, who's looking like last year's Jamija Ford. So we'll see. They have a bevy of talent there at South Carolina, and they will probably show up and show out this weekend at the Tiger Paw Invitational, which I'm expecting. I think more so on the women's side, the rankings are pretty much ready to shift. I think on the men's side, they may shift a little bit, but on the women's side, I think there's going to be some jumping, moving around of the rankings because of what's to come this weekend. These teams are all competing against each other. There are really, two big meets, and then there's a third out west that's more of a distance heavy meet, and that's, at the University of Washington, the Husky Invitational, or the Washington Invitational. But those three meets are really the big meets of this weekend where we're going to see times drop. And, if we want to include another distance meet, you got the Valentine Invitational, I believe it's at Boston University. Not at the same level, but it's always, it's going to be there on Flow Tracks. So if you got a Flow Tracks subscription, go ahead and watch. This is a weekend where I would encourage you to have, your phone on you, tablet, however you engage with the sport, please do so. This is, a very important weekend. We're watching the sport grow before our eyes, and I'm loving seeing it, and I know some of you are too. But that's where we're going to leave things today. So if you have any thoughts or comments or suggestions about my rankings, please leave a comment. Please like, share, subscribe, and I look forward to speaking with you all again soon. Thanks for your support as always.